Alright, welcome back to the Yard. This week is the first in a very special two-part podcast with the one and only Dan Selby. We sat down, recorded for just over 3 hours, so it was a really long one. I figured it'd be best to split into two parts. So this is part one, just get straight into it. We talk a lot about his early days of getting into backyard wrestling, being a wrestling fan in general, going to the early interfeds, things like that. A lot of stuff covered. It was a lot of fun talking to him, so I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Yeah, good man. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, sounds good, man. Yeah, I've got some questions written down, just basically a guideline for me, really.
Yeah?
And then I just kind of note down matches that I might want to touch on at some point.
Yeah, sounds good, mate.
It's just funny because I've done that for everyone so far, and with you, the list of matches is just, I haven't really stopped. Noting definitely it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I must admit, I was listening to the Dreamer one, and he was talking about certain things that I'd just forgotten about, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it goes over such a long span of time. It's pretty unbelievable. But it's definitely got me in the mood for it. It was really good. I mean, I've got an hour into it. I've still got half hour to go, but. Cool. I mean, you can sit and listen to him all day. He's a great guy to listen to.
Definitely.
But I'm ready to roll, mate. I'm ready to do this.
Cool. Well, I was thinking of just maybe being a bit different with this one. Usually I'm starting out saying, how did you first start watching wrestling and stuff like that. And I'll probably ask you that as well, but I thought I'd go into to start this off with my view of you. Because we were just going to get the arse licking out of the way first, you know what I mean? Yeah, when I started, you were the one who, that's the guy, that's the best in my opinion. And when I started taking it more seriously, the goal for me was to get good enough that I could have a match with you. And maybe it was almost more important to me that I could have a match with you and people would be they'd accept it,
Yeah.
And that kind of happened because we were booked to wrestle at Britfest 2007.
That's right.
And everyone on the booking board was like, yeah, cool, sounds good. And that to me was right, I've made it as far as I really want to go in terms of being accepted into the community, I think. But of course that match didn't happen. It's just one of those things. And it comes up a lot with backyarders, I think. There's always a match that you wish you'd had and it just doesn't really happen and stuff like that. Do you have any like that? People that you wish you'd worked with?
That's a very good question. I mean, for a start, obviously, the obvious answer is you. Because
I'm not fishing for that. I mean,
No, I understand that, but as you say, it was planned. I think we could have had a very good match. I think our styles would have complemented each other very well, and obviously, as you said there, obviously, I'm very honoured to feel like that was your aspiration, that was your goal to get to that level. That's obviously a very, very big compliment. And, so I know that you'd be going into it, absolutely putting in 110%. And in turn, I'd obviously try and do the same. And, that's good ingredients for a great match there, hopefully. So, yeah, no, that's a match I would have enjoyed. I seem to remember one spot in particular that always stands out, that we were going to do the double elbow drop. Do you remember that?
Of course, I think about it all the time. Well, not all the time, but,
Yeah.
Every often I think, it's so fucking good,
Yeah, because I seem to remember the idea was we had a table in the middle, just for, anybody listening, and, it's all well and good us talking about our ideas, but we had a table in the middle of the ring, and I think we were going to be standing either side of it, giving each other, exchange of blows, and then ramming each other's head on the table, and then, gradually sort of falling to our knees, leaning on either side of the table.
Yeah.
And then kind of smashing each other's head into it one more time and kind of both almost flopping off the side of the table, crawling to the turnbuckle, thinking that the other guy's still leaning on the table, climbing up, and then only when we turn round, we realise that we've both gone for the same idea.
Yeah.
And we're looking at each other across the ring as if to say, what the fuck? I thought you were down on the table. Okay, this is going to be a game of chicken now. Fuck it. Let's do this. And we both dive off, hit each other in midair and crash land through the table. I've never seen it done. I don't know if I ever will see it done. I thought it was a really nice idea because, the important thing for me is it's all well and good having a big high spot, but I like it to be a little bit different. I like it to try and involve some of the signature moves as well.
Yeah.
I just love anything that's a little bit different, even if it takes or if it doesn't. I'll always tip my hat and say fair play for thinking out of the box, because I love wrestling and it is an art, but I've watched it since 1993, and obviously there's only so many times you can see this or so many times you can see that. The product's got to evolve, and especially with how stale the WWE product is now, obviously there's only one show in town. They've got their method of what wrestling should be, and you know it's a cardboard cookie cutter type deal that they've got going on there. You know, a lot of the matches are the same. A lot of the wrestlers are interchangeable. And that way of thinking, I absolutely detest. I really love an original flavour. And even if it is just one spot in a match that makes you go, I've never seen that. That's really cool. And as I said, even if it doesn't take, I'd still always tip my hat and say, I can see where you were coming from. I appreciate the effort. So, yeah, gone around the houses a little bit there. But,
Cool.
yeah, so you would be one of the guys. I think we could have had a good match. Let me think. Is there anyone in particular? I
suppose you've really wrestled everyone, haven't you? I think it's more case of someone you wish you'd had a bigger match with, maybe something like that.
Well, the one that always springs to mind is me and Dave. I mean, we were meant to top off our feud in the biggest way possible. You know, me and Hollywood Phallus, whatever you want to call him, which now looking back is just hilarious that was ever even taken as a legitimate gimmick. I mean, people would literally say, you know, oh, your Phallus's matches, they were great. You know, at the time, like, it wasn't even a joke anymore. You know, he was just Hollywood Phallus. But looking back, he was just Hollywood Penis. I mean, come on. But, you know, we're trying to do all this shit seriously. But then again, that is backyard wrestling in itself, isn't it? But, you know, we'd had a very, very long feud, just to kind of, again, go around the houses a little bit here. I met Dave in 2002, along with Dreamer and Costa, Short Round, and all the rest of it. And, you know, obviously a big guy. He was a very, very big guy then. And we still laugh about this to this day. My first impressions of him weren't great because I did a run-in on the DBWF, which was Dave's Backyard Wrestling Federation.
Yeah.
So they were a stable in ECW, so it was Dave, Short Round, and the Business. So the idea was, and this is ECW 1, 2002, that I was going to run in and try and take them out. Something like that. I can't remember. So I run in, and Short Round hits me with a stunner. Business hits me with a rock bottom. And Dave was going to hit me with a tombstone. So the idea kind of was, you know, that they were the WWE fans, because, you know, ECW, obviously we loved ECW and all the death match, whereas they kind of come in with their WWE characters and moves, and that was kind of the undertones of the feud.
Yeah.
So Dave was going to hit me with a tombstone. You're thinking, well, I'm basically 5'0", pretty much weighing nothing. Dave's a big guy. This should be easy. So he picks me upside down. The next thing I know, I'm just awkwardly landing on my head.
Ugh.
And the move hasn't gone right. I know that much. I can't see it, but the move hasn't gone right. And he basically just dropped me and kind of fell to a knee and completely fucked it up. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's just a big buffoon. Like, seriously, he's just dropped me on my head dangerously. This is my first impression of him. So it wasn't great, but then we ended up having a match with each other. I think it was a wee botch, ironically. I think it might have been a show after, and I was really surprised that we actually gelled quite well. It wasn't a perfect match. There were a few mess-ups, but we were kind of on the same page, and there was kind of that big man, small guy type thing, and, you know, actually worked quite well. So we started to become very, very close outside of wrestling. Both shared a huge, huge love for wrestling. Started to spend a lot of time with each other. You know, as you know, the whole Dave and Selby thing, you know, it almost became a brand in a sense.
Yeah.
It just became a thing, you know. And obviously we wanted to face each other more. You're sitting there watching wrestling, you know, we're heavily into Chris Benoit, specifically watching a lot of his Japanese work, you know, discussing the idea of psychology. You know, we both learnt together. We had such in-depth conversations that we ended up enlightening each other. You know, we were picking things apart, understanding why it was happening. And then obviously you start to go, okay, how can we utilise this? So, you know, we started having a series of matches, and Dave was rapidly improving. I think where he was getting more serious about it, he wanted to do better. He was watching more wrestling, more different types of wrestling as well, as opposed to just WWE. And it really showed. And we decided we wanted to strap the rockets to him. You know, we wanted to give him a push. So me and Oz decided, okay, you know, we put the belt on him. He ended up defeating Costa, who was our underdog champion, almost like the Mikey Whipwreck. He defeated Costa at Dangerous Jeopardy 2003. And it was just a table fest match where Dave just utterly destroyed Costa. But it was also the match where he got pushed off the garage roof, which became an iconic shot, one of ECW's biggest clips, because he was breaking barriers. He was absolutely breaking barriers. He said, you know, the big man doesn't leave his feet. I'm going to change it. I remember him just saying, I'm going to change it. Everything I'm not meant to do, I'm going to do and show everybody up. Because, you know, I want this. I want to get better. I want recognition. So that was kind of our pat on the back to him, saying, we appreciate that. Here's the belt. Go and do your thing. And that's what he did. And we ended up having a big feud for it. We went across the country with it. We went to Wales with it. You know, even when Dave was facing other people, I'd run in or he'd run in. The feud went on for over the course of about a year, which is pretty unheard of in backyard terms for any feud to carry over for that long and genuinely have flow. So yeah, basically, to cut a long story short, we were meant to be having this final match at. They said it shouldn't be done 2003, which is that was at the end of 2003, and it was meant to be at John Cameron's, the YWF Arena, where we did the ECWYWF shows in the broken down old ring, and we had it all planned out, and we were going to use the car. We were going to. I seem to remember it was going to be last man standing, and you know, for the title, where I was going to go over after his 9-month reign. And I seem to remember we had so much planned around the car. He was going to try and run me over. And I was going to jump out the way at the last minute, get the door open, beat the shit out of him at the wheel, ram his head into the wheel. I was going to go into the boot, pull out a barbed wire 2x4, you know, all this shit. Like, it was all sequential. You know, I'm not much of a spot guy, but it was kind of more of it was almost like a movie. It was almost like a fight scene, you know, because we knew that this had to be it. This had to blow everything out of the water. And we'd set the bar quite high. I mean, I don't know how many times we hit each other as hard as we could, but it was a lot. And you've got to have a story to it. You can't just go in there and keep battering each other. So, you know, we're big fans of Mick Foley, and a lot of his matches like that. Think about the I Quit match with The Rock. That was kind of like that, where they moved around the building and utilised different bits and pieces. You know, he got thrown onto the, what was it? It was some sort of electrical device. I remember all the sparks flying out. And yeah, we wanted to do that kind of thing. And I seem to remember the end spot. It was something involving a ladder. We were either both going to fall to the outside through lots of tables, but I also seem to remember there was a spot where we were both up the ladder holding trays, and we were exchanging blows on top of the ladder, and then we were going to hit each other at the same time, and the tray sort of bounced back in your face, and we were both going to do a double bump backwards off the ladder. I can't remember whether that was the final spot or falling off the ladder, but you know, it makes no difference because the match didn't end up happening as it should have done.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, that event fell through. At the last minute, we had to do it at XEW with Toby in Braintree. I'm not sure if you heard of them.
No, not much.
No, so but he had a ring in his back garden, So we ended up doing it there, but because it was in the back garden, you couldn't have the car in there. And then all of a sudden, a lot of our spots just weren't happening anymore. So it wasn't the same match. And Dave wasn't feeling very well that day. I mean, he's admitted to me he fabricated it a little bit because he was just so down. He was so disappointed. Like he said, he had a stomach issue, but he said it was mainly just disappointment. He was just so gutted that this match that's been a year in the making, this ending, the cherry on top, and it wasn't going to be how we imagined it. But we ended up still having a good match. We still had the last man standing match. I still think it's quite a nice image at the end where we're both trying to climb up to our feet and Dave's legs go from underneath him and I'm the last man standing and everyone gets in the ring. And, it's a nice image and we shake hands at the end after this year-long feud. But, obviously it's a shame that it didn't go how it was supposed to go. So, for me, it's probably you, Dave, and honestly, that's probably it. Because as you say, I was very lucky enough to face such a wide range of people. I probably would have liked a nice one-on-one with Danny Yarko from EMBW because he was the guy that taught me an awful lot. I thought I was good. I sucked. And he was the one that showed me how to do a collar and elbow. He was the one that built some of those fundamentals into me and, taught me how to hit a clean bump and the importance of, when to do this and when to do that. He was great. He took me to the next level. So it would have been really nice to have a proper one-on-one with him. But unfortunately, just as I was improving, his interest was starting to wane. So that one never happened. That would have been really nice. But yeah, other than that, honestly, mate, I can't really immediately think of anyone.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, that's a very long answer, but...
Yeah, sorry. You're going
to
have to cut me off at some points, mate. I do go into a little bit of a story. And
no, I mean that in a good way, to be honest. It's interesting stuff to me. And going back to the elbow drop spot,
yes.
Just to add my little thing, I think that it's such a risky spot to do because the timing would have to be picture perfect,
Yeah.
But I think we could have done it, And
I think so.
And I think the risk, the risk of it not going, but, if it would have actually happened, I think it would have been such a ridiculous moment.
I think, for me, the most important thing that I kept thinking of was making it look legit, and that for me is all part of it because it's on the surface, it's a very, very hokey spot. But you need to make it make sense. And as long as we don't look at each other and we fucked each other up hard enough and rammed our heads into the table so many times that we think that motherfucker ain't moving from there. And, we crawl either way, don't look back, climb up the ropes, almost as if you're going to do a moonsault. So obviously don't go to the outside and climb up, but just face away from each other. And then that moment you both turn round. Again, it's almost like the moment in a film. It's the face-off. And we both realise it at exactly the same time. And it's, as I said, it's a game of chicken. Who's going to back down? Oh, not me. Oh, and not you as well. Fuck it. Let's do it. Let's see who's going to come off worse. And, to me, it makes sense. With two hardcore wrestlers, that's what you do. So, it's just about it making sense. But, I did a spot that was kind of not too dissimilar. It was at the SWF arena, if you want to call it that, in the ring. It was in the freeway with me, DOD, and Barnesy, Voodoo. Yeah. We did a double elbow drop.
Oh, that was ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, and it just went absolutely perfect. So I think timing-wise, we'd probably be okay. That's the closest thing I've ever done to it anyway.
I think that if we just straight up just done it with no build-up, it would have got a good pop, it would have got a good reaction. Yeah. But building it up and putting the story into it would have been what made it special, I think.
100%. I mean, that's just it for me. That is completely it. It took me a while to get there, but once I kind of turned that corner and realised the importance of timing and build up, it was a game changer. It was a complete game changer. The whole philosophy of less is more. I never got it. I never agreed with it. I firmly disagreed with it. But so it just clicked in my head. I realised, make the people wait for it. You can't have WrestleMania every week. This is why I hate Raw. You can't have a pay-per-view every week, and that's what they do. You can't do that. And why do you think the product sucks at the moment? Because you've got a pay-per-view every week. That's a problem, you know? So I just adopted that in my wrestling style, and you got to build it up, make the people salivate, you know, and they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But like that match, you know, I've told you before, sometimes when I think about it, it almost like makes me feel physically uncomfortable that it just didn't happen, you know what I mean? It was just like, oh, I really wanted that match. And of course we, you know, had the little falling out over, you know, the petty stuff. But you know, which is just, you know, again, looking back on it, you just think, oh, really? You know, but it was just, was what it was, I guess. But
it is, yeah. And, you know, we're not going to go in too much depth.
No.
Over a girl when it's probably going to be a recurring theme. You know, it's funny. I was listening to the Dreamer one, and it was a great interview. What made me laugh is the amount of times it's brought up. Oh, I think Selby had heat with me, or oh, Selby had heat with me, or oh, Selby had heat with me. It's like, oh my god, really, Jesus. But a lot of it is over women. You know, it's part of it, and you know, art imitated life or whatnot, because we were doing the pro wrestling thing. We were doing it in our own bubble, and all the same shit was happening. You know, people were getting annoyed that they weren't getting opportunities. Women were getting involved. There was heat. It was amazing just how much it mirrored it. It really is. And yeah, you know, it was stupid. It was one of those things. And, you know, I was very hurt. You know, it was my first proper girlfriend, you know. Obviously, at the time, I thought I was in love with her. Looking back, probably not, and that's no offence to her.
And I could say the exact same thing.
Exactly. You know, it's funny, man. I mean, perception's reality, and at the time, you can only go by what's going on at the time. You know, you haven't got your crystal ball. You know, we're not fully matured yet. And
there was this one moment at Heat Fest, which was when was that? A few months after, I guess, something like that. And you were there, and you had that match with Ads, which was just incredible.
Oh,
and,
right.
I can't remember what it was now, but there was one spot in that match that we had planned for the Britfest match, and I was like, oh, man. But I loved it, even though there was that awkward elephant in the room thing going on between us. I loved that match, and I almost went up to you afterwards just to kind of, you know, level it out. And I wish I'd done that in person, because, you know, we spoke about a year afterwards and kind of, you know, mended the thing. But
yeah,
I wish I'd done that in person, you know. But then again, it might be too soon, I think, as well. So.
I can't remember what mindset I was in, but I do remember on my entrance, I seem to remember noticing you clapping me.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's cool. I appreciate that. Like, even though there's a personal difference, I appreciated that. I noticed that. Whether it was on a very subconscious level, I don't know. But in some shape or form, I do seem to remember noticing that and thinking, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I think if you'd spoke to me, I think it would have been fine. You know, I think that alone, just you give me that applause, I think that was almost enough to get halfway there to mending it, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, that to me that's my favourite backup match I've seen. It was basically the kind of wrestling I like, done in the best way I've seen. And there was a part of me that was like, I wish that was me instead of Ads. But, you know, I love Ads as well. He's one of my best mates from BYW. So it was just a fucking pleasure to see that match. It was brilliant.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. And it's up there with one of my favourite matches. I think I've always said my best technical match was me and DOD at Betterfest, and the best hardcore stroke death match that I've ever had was me and Ads. Because, again, it was about telling a story.
Yeah, of course.
Not just mindless violence. There was mindless violence, but it had a purpose, and the whole purpose of the match was him being afraid. And it's a fucking simple story, but sometimes the simple ones are the best ones. And, you know, I appreciate what you said about that. I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as I did. And, I loved it. Do you know what the spot was that I stole from our potential match and used?
Well, it was your idea anyway. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember thinking, I turned to someone and said, "Oh, we fucking planned that forever." Not in a fuck him kind of way, but like oh damn, I wish, you know, I want to be in there, you know.
Oh man, I'm just trying to think what it could have been, but it was really, really good fun. Really, really enjoyed that match an awful lot.
Yeah, just to round this whole thing off, you know, again we spoke after like a year or so, And then we've, again, we speak mainly just online and stuff, but last night we spoke for a while.
Yeah.
And just the idea, I guess, what we were talking about last night about a lot of people who have obviously moved on. I think most of us, well, obviously we've moved on from doing it, but the idea of moving on from remembering it in a good way, Like there's some people who, seemingly have just, like people like DOD, for example, who have just completely vanished, don't speak to anyone from BYW and stuff like that. It was refreshing to me to know that you kind of felt about BYW the same way I do now.
Yeah.
Looking back on it and still having such a love for it and a passion for it. Even though it's gone, even though it's done with, but, something to look back on and be proud of, I think.
Yeah, for sure. There's part of me that almost wishes I didn't feel that strongly.
I get that.
I miss it a lot. I miss it an awful lot.
Very bittersweet at times.
Yeah, very, very, very bittersweet because, all good things have to come to an end. And I think the ultimate realisation for me, I mean, talk about finding out a little bit too late, but the ultimate realisation was the last Better Fest. I mean, I can't even call it a Better Fest because it wasn't a Better Fest. It was a couple of matches. I'd worked so hard to try and organise that event. I mean, I worked so hard trying to drum up interest for it. And, everybody's saying, yeah, it's going to be great. Oh, I'm looking forward to facing him, blah, 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 blah. I mean, Burton had washed his hands of it. He said, mate, if you want to do it, you can do it. I'm not getting involved. He was completely honest about it. I said, that's fine, mate, as long as I know.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, I don't want to get involved. It was a lot of hassle last time. I think it's going to be a lot more hassle this time. I don't want to get involved. I said, that's absolutely fine. So I did it all myself, and we got a good turnout. I mean, just trying to organise the ring base alone is the biggest pain in the arse. And, there's the irony that we've just sold a 18 by 18 foot wrestling ring and we can't even use that. So, we ended up using the padding from that and, we've got Richard to drive down and drop it off to us. But it was just sad. It just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. It wasn't that big send-off that I wanted for, either XPB or wrestling, whatever. It wasn't the same. It was lovely to see everyone. But I remember when me and Dreamer had that match, I just remember thinking, fucking have this, guys. Like, fucking have this. Like, I'm going to absolutely leave everything in the ring. I'm going to give everything. Because I said I'm going to wrestle, and I was very disappointed some people that gave it the talk and wouldn't walk the walk. It annoyed me.
Yeah.
And I carried a lot of that anger into that match. I was pissed off. I was really pissed off. I'd put in a lot of work for a lot of people to talk and then not walk the walk. And that annoyed me. That was kind of the moment I realised it really is 200% done. We couldn't even do a reunion show or anything because I know it'd be the same thing again. Because, a lot of people have asked me, we're going to do another Better Fest. And I'm like, no. Absolutely not. If somebody wants to organise it, that's great. But I'm not building up my hopes just to have them knocked down again because I take things too personally. I'm a very, very oversensitive person. Very, very oversensitive. I've always had this problem. And, when I'm disappointed, I'm very disappointed. And I struggle to manage my expectations to, a reasonable and realistic level. Still to this day, I find it very, very difficult. So, yeah, that was probably the moment I realised it really is the final nail in the coffin. But obviously it was pretty clear towards the end of 2008, 2009 that it was most certainly winding down. But no, I miss it tremendously for so many different reasons. I just feel like, around 2003, I will always look back probably at that year as being the prime of my life. I hope that there are better years to come.
Yeah.
But for me, I just had everything. I had absolutely everything. Best friends in the world, doing the best hobby in the world. I had, interest from girls. I weren't a bad little looking geezer back then. And, everything was great. Life was carefree. I mean, the only things I was worrying about was the politics of UKBYW and what a life that would be to live today,
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it's something I miss a lot. I just miss that togetherness. I miss the competition. I miss the discussions till 5 a.m. I miss watching the events afterwards. I miss the creativity. I miss setting up a makeshift entranceway. I just, just everything, dude. I miss it a lot. But, what I can say is it's incredible that we've got the amount of media that we've got out of it.
Oh, yeah.
All the memories, the friends. Some of those things are going to live forever. But I miss it a lot. I miss it a lot. And it kind of breaks my heart when people distance themselves quite hard from it, because I understand we're older, but to me, that I said this in the part that I wrote for your book, and I do feel strongly about it. It was our version of jumpers for goalposts. We, when people play football, they imagine they're at Wembley, they're taking a penalty, it's the cup final. That's what we did. Every time we set up a makeshift ring base, that was our jumpers for goalposts. That was us going into our little bubble, into our own little world. Yeah. And it was the perfect storm of the right people at the right place at the right time. And I was so lucky to be a part of it, as good as from start to finish. And, incredible. There'll never be anything like it. There'll never, ever be anything like it. And again, I said it in your book, I wish I could word exactly how much it meant to me. It was the last time in my life that I felt like I had that childhood magic. It was the last time that I had that feeling the night before Christmas. It was like that. I still had that magic, that buzz, but I just looked at life in a less pessimistic fashion, and it was magical. That's the thing. I know the word gets thrown around a lot, but it was, it literally filled my body with excitement. It was just, it was like nothing else. It really was. And for anyone who's a part of it in that era will know what I mean. But yeah, no, as I said, miss it a lot. Glad we got the memories.
Definitely. I said to Dreamer, it feels like I was part of like an exclusive little club, of only maybe like 100 or so people. Anyone outside that can be told about it, but they can't get it unless they were there. And obviously I wish I was there earlier, but, I was still there for many years when, a lot of the interfeds were going down and stuff. But yeah. Share the same sentiment as you on the whole thing.
Absolutely, yes. It's a shame you weren't there earlier, man. I mean, it was... like the heyday, as it were.
Yeah.
It was something else. It was just hot. It was just hot, hot, hot. I just remember, it would be very normal to receive an email or two every month of people wanting to film it. Various people from different documentaries or universities, different backgrounds. It was just hot. It was a really hot activity at the time, and it was because we were so passionate about it. It was infectious, but you didn't really dip your toes in. You dived in. It was so hot, man, and the whole thing was completely infectious. It was great.
Yeah. Well, this kind of feels like a fucking Quentin Tarantino podcast. We started with the ending. But I want to go back, if you've got the time, to the beginning, really, where, maybe not when did you first start watching or whatever, but what was it that really lit that fire in you to go, not from just, wrestling in the living room, but to actually start doing, wrestling outside and putting on events and things like that in the early days? What was, in terms of pro wrestling, what was it that hooked you?
It's an interesting question. I think a lot of it was probably the origins of DX. I'm probably thinking here. Let me think about this. So I got into it in '93. Seem to remember the first guy I remember was Randy Savage, because I remember going into school the next day and my friend Paul, who told me to start watching wrestling, I spoke to him and I said, I watched it. Who's that guy with the tassels coming out of his arms? And I remember him finding it absolutely hilarious. I was like, what? Who is he? He was like, that's Randy Savage. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. And I remember the dumpster. He was like, oh yeah, Duke Drosy. Yeah, he was on it as well. Those are the two guys I remember. But anyway, we then started wrestling at school during break. But when things started to get really hot was around the time when DX first formed. And I'm talking about when, when it was Rick Rude, China, Triple H and Michaels, the first section. They were actually called the Click, I think, at first. Before they were called DX, I'm pretty sure for a month or two they were called the Click. And I remember that's when wrestling started getting big. So obviously we just became DX. So there'd be a few of us. We were just called DX, and we'd go round asking people for matches, because we felt like Paul started using the internet, and he found out that some guys got paid to lose, called jobbers. So we thought, okay, why don't we give people 20p to come and be a jobber for us?
Fucking hell.
And us motherfuckers wouldn't even pay them. They'd do the job, they'd lay down for us. Half the time we'd wrestle on concrete, because it started to become such a big thing that a lot of the teachers were looking out for it. So I remember we'd go around the corner of one of the buildings, and we'd used to just wrestle on concrete. And so that's when things started getting bigger. And again, it's infectious, people going, oh, what are you doing? Oh, we're wrestling. Oh, you should start watching it. Okay. And it all catches on. And then we started doing it outside of school. And that, for me, is probably the first version of me backyarding, because you're doing it outside of somewhere, like you're specifically making time to set up an event. So that would have been around 97. And I remember we were really into the hardcore stuff. So it would have been the sort of start of the Attitude Era, when, you were getting some of the hardcore wrestling on the mainstream. So, you had your guys like Mankind who were going through tables. And as a kid, it absolutely turned me on. Like the hardcore stuff, it was something I needed. Even at that age, it was the change I needed, because I fell out of love with wrestling in 95. The product was so boring, WWF. It was just jobber match, mid-carder versus mid-carder. That's all it was. It was boring. And I've actually got to thank Marty Jannetty for getting me back into it, because I remember Paul saying, Marty Jannetty's come back. I was like, what? No, and he was one of my favourites. So I started watching again just because Marty Jannetty made his 10th return to WWF. So I was slowly starting to get bored again. So I needed that Attitude Era to come along and spice things up a little bit. And obviously you've got to remember, I'm 97. So I would have been about 11. I'm slowly becoming a teenager, the rebellious stage. You need something a little bit different. So we kind of recreated that. We often did hardcore matches. We'd steal road signs. I remember there was this epic one we spoke about for ages. I've got a feeling it was 1998. And it was round the corner from where I used to live. We had a 4-way match. And I remember the big hardcore spot in it was I was lying on the floor, and Paul stood over me with a triangular road sign, and it slid out of his hands, and the corner of it hit me directly on the chin and busted me open. And I mean, in my mind, I'm bleeding everywhere, but it was probably a little trickle of blood. And it was like, should we stop? I was like, nah, let's carry on. So he carried on, and I felt like the fucking man. I felt like Mick Foley. It's the first time I felt hardcore, like I'm cut out for this. So yeah, that was probably when Backyard started happening, about 97, 98, I'd say, when we were specifically taking time out to go and have a match.
All right, this is something I'm asking everyone. When did you first hear the term backyard wrestling or / find the forum?
Good question. I would assume it was probably through Paul again, because he was always ahead when it comes to technology. He was more well off than I was. So he got the internet in like 94. I would assume he found it. The first proper fed that we started was KCW, Catherine's Championship Wrestling. That was the area we used to live in. So I would imagine it would be around that time, because that would have been the reasoning for setting up a fed per se. I think would have been because he would have seen it online and said, look, other people are doing this. Why don't we do it and film it? So, yeah, I would say it would probably be through him, and it would probably be end of 99, start of 2000.
Okay, cool. And when did ECW start, in whatever the earliest form of it was?
ECW started right at the very start of 2002.
Okay. So what happened between 99 and 2002 then? What were you doing?
Okay, so 2000 was the inception of KCW, Catherine's Championship Wrestling, which was me, Paul, and a couple of very local guys who didn't really even like wrestling that much. But as I said, he probably saw something online and felt the need to, come up with a brand. So it doesn't matter that we've only got 2 or 3 people who want to wrestle. We're going to have our own fed because that's what we've got to do. So, so that was that year. It was mainly just me versus Paul pretty much every match. Loads of DDTs, loads of dangerous pile drivers, me taking every fucking bump badly, him never taking a bump. It was just weapon shot after weapon shot. We were thinking we were the men. We thought it was absolutely great. We'd watch it back and thought it looked brilliant. So that was really the first opportunity we got to actually look at what we were doing because we were filming it and, trying to critique it. So, yeah, that was very much my first proper backyard wrestling year as a part of the community because, we'd made our own website, uploaded some pictures,
Right.
a couple of very ropey clips. So, yeah, that was our first proper introduction to the backyard community. Then in 2001, we did HWA, and this is where wrestling started getting really big. So I'm in secondary school, so we've made a load of new friends. We had a very, very, very big friendship group in school. We weren't the most popular guys, but we had the biggest group. By the end of it, we actually were the most popular group in the school, but that's another story. So there was a lot of people with... sort of drifting interest in wrestling, passing interest, who wanted to come along. And we made the HWA because, it seemed appropriate. We weren't just wrestling in Catherine's anymore. It's kind of more of a Harlow thing. So we made Hardcore Wrestling Action. So again, I wanted the name to be different. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So we went with Hardcore Wrestling Action, and we wrestled on mattresses. We had a great time. I mean, it was so much fun. There was a good core, 8 of us that kind of regularly did it, all through school friends, secondary school friends. So that was great. I seem to remember our final show being, I think it was January 2002 maybe, and it just wasn't the same anymore. Nobody was interested. So I realised that I needed to spread my wings and leave the nest. That's when the internet was getting bigger. The forum, let's see, UKBYW link and things like that was probably about the UKBYW network. Basically, the early versions of the forum were starting to come to fruition.
Right.
So I realised, I've got to do my own thing. I've been talking to this guy called Ollie. I started talking to him in 2001 on a forum called Wrestling Talks, which was the first forum that I'd ever used for backyard wrestling. And it turned out he lived half an hour away from me. Thought, awesome. This is a guy that loves wrestling just as much as me. And me and a few of the HWA guys actually went up there once. But unfortunately, it was just at the time when they were starting to lose interest. But I actually found a few of the clips from there the other day from 2001 of us going to Ollie's for the very first time. It was the first time I ever met him was when he's got a skinhead and everything. Yeah, it was quite amazing finding those clips again. It was quite emotional going back that far. I thought I'd lost them forever. So yeah, I kept seeing Ollie. We absolutely loved ECW. He'd collect all the bad VHS tapes. We'd start till late watching ECW, Cactus Jack, Terry Funk, Sandman. Absolutely loving it. Tommy Dreamer, Raven. And we decided, we're ECW. We're going to be ECW. Complete contrast to me trying to be creative. But we thought, hey, nobody else has been that ridiculous enough to just call themselves it. You know, everybody else has just done cheap knockoffs, so why don't we just be ECW, but we'll just be Essex Championship Wrestling? Like, who cares? We want to just shout ECW because we love ECW.
Yeah.
It's our way of life. So we kind of had no shame in that. And the original idea for ECW, the original concept, it was actually going to be an indoor thing. I looked into a hall that was around the corner from me, next to the shops, and a little like community hall. And the whole idea was we were going to wrestle on mats. And I seem to remember we just had this idea, just a very, very set idea that we'd have an ECW banner in there all the time. And we were going to make our own tables and make them really good. So I found these old deck chairs that had fallen apart. I tore out all the plastic. You're just left with like the metal frame, folded them up. They kind of looked like table legs. They were brown as well, so sorted. Got loads of old wardrobe doors. Got some black electrical tape to tape all around the edges of the table. So you almost had like that wiry frame to it when you go for it. And that was the concept. We were going to do it in a hall, on mats, making our own tables, because, you know, that was obviously a very important part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be the idea for ECW, but it didn't come about. I can't remember whether it was a money issue or whether they didn't want us doing it there. But, yeah, ECW started off as literally me and Oz. That's all it was. And we had various different gimmicks. We had, he had Stiff Oswald as an alter ego. I had Hidden Agenda was another one of my alter egos, which was basically just me wearing a woolly hat. You know, just to make some more matches, because there was literally just us two. But, you know, I met Birch in 2001 as well, so he was dotted about and sometimes losing interest, sometimes back again. So he became a part of ECW. We even had the Yarkos down for, I think, our third show, which was awesome. And then we finally got chatting to Dan Dreamer and all the rest of them, and we ended up merging with them. They were SCBW at the time. They ended up merging into ECW. And we renamed ourselves from Essex Championship Wrestling to Eastern Championship Wrestling, again, which is a nod to the original ECW, which used to be called Eastern Championship Wrestling.
That's right, yeah.
You know, it was appropriate because it was Kent and Essex. So, yeah, that's how all that come about anyway.
Cool. So what was the difference? I mean, obviously, it's going to be different because you've got more than one person to wrestle with, but going from just you and Oz... I'm sure I've seen a comp actually of just you two having a match and like the camera's just set up like, you know. Yeah.
You look at our first show, Dangerous Jeopardy 2002.
I think that's the one I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, we even did like skits and stuff. There's a part of it where I attack him in his own home. It's actually my house, but the gimmick was I attacked him in his own home. So literally, we just sat the camcorder down on the table. He's just sitting there on the sofa. I hit him with a tray. Oh, we brawl into the kitchen, so now we've got to sit on top of the washing machine. You know, just everything, whatever we were doing, there weren't that third man. So it really goes to show the level of commitment and how much we really wanted to do it. You know, nothing was going to stop us. Definitely. Absolutely nothing. We were going to do it. Yeah. Sorry, what was the original question? Was there...
Just the difference moving from that with just the two of you and then having other guys coming in and, you know, building the Fed up, you know, kind of...
Oh, the main thing was reaction. It was the adrenaline. It was getting the, you know, rather than just silence and me trying to catch my breath again after a bump, you're hearing, oh!
I'll tell you one thing, just to cut you off. I want to ask you, because when I spoke to GBH, he told a great story. It was just like him and Rage and so on. And Dreamer came down for one of their shows. And he said they didn't understand the concept of marking out. It was a brilliant... And he said that Dreamer was wrestling and they were just standing there silently just thinking to themselves, yeah, that's really good, but they weren't reacting because they didn't really know, you know?
I remember him telling me that. I actually do remember him telling me that.
It's a great story, I love that. But when did you become familiar with the concept of marking out? I mean, obviously it's very different when it's just a couple of, you know...
Yeah, it's strange, actually, because now you mention it, I'm thinking about when I used to do HWA, so that was 2001. I remember then we were doing the American accents. So the promos were American.
Yeah.
The commentary was American. And I remember seeing EMBW. That was what changed it. I saw EMBW and they had this fucking commentator. He was called The Laugh. And he actually may have been the first person I ever met in Backyard. come to think of it.
Huh.
Yeah, I met him when I was 13. I randomly got on a train up to
The
his...
laugh.
Yeah, he was called The Laugh, and he was the designated commentator. They actually had just a commentator, which to me was crazy in itself. Yeah, he was actually the first guy I think I ever met in backyard. I just, I was 13. I got on a train on my own, didn't tell my mum, and as you can imagine, she was mortified when I got back and said, I've been hanging out with some 18-year-old bloke, having a beer with him. I mean, how fucking dodgy does that sound? But, yeah, so I remember seeing clips of ECW, and this fucking commentator, still to this day, like, just some of the stuff he came out with just made these clips iconic, and it just won't sound any good to anybody. But if you were there at the time, his soundtracks to all these clips just fucking made him. Like, it was the cherry on top. He had such enthusiasm. He would shout. And again, I use the word a lot, but it was infectious.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing those clips, and I said to myself, right, we're doing it wrong. We need to be proud to be English. So whenever I was commentating, I started using an English voice. And I then realised it's okay to mark out. It's fine. And encourage everyone else to do it. I even remember specifically saying to people, like, can you make some more noise? Like, I basically started asking for people to mark out for me, which is ridiculous. But I wanted that soundtrack there, It wasn't the same, So I started realising I'm going to have to make them mark out. And I remember it was the first time I used fire. It was the first time I used tax. I think I used both in the same match because I was so fed up. I wanted a fucking reaction. And I ended up getting it. I mean, it was just shocked mainly. Like, it was just like, oh my God. Oh God. Like, it wasn't even really a market. It was just like, oh shit, this is really dangerous. But hey, it was a start. So yeah, that's probably where I started to realise that it's okay and maybe we should just be a bit more open about how we feel about this or that. Yeah. And it adds to the presentation. It makes you feel an awful lot better when you're in pain.
What about the kind of the early hardcore stuff? I mean, again, like you said, using fire and thumbtacks and stuff. When did you start using that, and kind of what kind of gave you, I guess, the balls to do it or to try it and see what it, if it would really hurt or...
Foley, funk, just adored those guys.
No, I imagine I would have guessed that is how you would be inspired to do it, but just the act of doing it, you know what I mean? Like, actually, right, okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm just about to take a bump through a flaming table, whatever, the case may be.
Well, the thing is, I kind of always saw myself as a little Mick Foley. I was a little bit stumpy, a little bit overweight, had a big square arse, I could take bumps. I always saw myself as a little Foley, so I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. It's fine. Obviously, nerve-wracking. I remember the first time I did the fire bump, I took a really horrible hip toss and just sort of rolled through it. I think my back was actually on fire a little bit. Thumbtacks, I just took a lame back bump into them and thought, nah, this ain't too bad, I could do this again. Yeah, so that was it really, and that would have been in HWA. That would have been, summer of 2001. And then I remember the next big thing was was blading. I remember me and Ollie talking about it a lot, and we used to practice. We used to get out a razor blade and get in front of the mirror and blade.
I remember you told me this, and I couldn't believe it. Like, practicing blading.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man.
And he used to be very jealous because I could draw more blood. You think back now, we were just self-harming in front of the mirror. It's fucking crazy. But
yeah. Well, one thing, did you ever use fake blood at any point?
I did. Me versus Dream, the last match I had.
Really?
Yeah. I used a blood capsule. I started coughing up blood.
Oh, in the mouth, right. Nice.
Yeah. I have used it before. Ollie had made some really good fake blood, Oz, towards the start of ECW. I can't remember what show, but yeah, I'm pretty sure we both used a little bit each now and then. But no, never regularly. But yeah, I think kind of around the start of ECW. I think I've even used ketchup before in the... Yeah, I definitely used ketchup in KCW in 2000.
Yeah, that's what I've done is the old ketchup. But I hate ketchup, so it was disgusting to do.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? You don't really want to be smelling that on your head, do you?
Oh, you're not a ketchup fan?
I'm all right with ketchup. I just prefer it not on my head.
Yeah, no, I just can't. I can't stand it in general. And anytime I say it, people are like, "What? You don't like ketchup? Are you kidding me?" But no, I absolutely hate everything about it. But I still did it anyway because it was like, "Hey, blood," you know.
Exactly, mate. Easiest means of doing it, isn't it? Just get it out of the cupboard.
Right. So ECW then. I mean, when did it kind of? I don't know really how to pose this question, but when did it become what it became? You know, like that's a really vague question.
No.
Maybe you can kind of understand what I mean by that.
100%. I think it became what it became. I think that's the best way you could have asked it, actually. It was when we merged. It was when we merged with SCBW. Because me and Ollie were only going to get so far. Because all it was is me and Ollie plus guests. That's all we did. And this was another thing that I felt very, very strongly about was identity. I wanted people to know whether somebody was a guest because I didn't want to rip people off saying, oh, they're now in ECW, because that was one thing I hated about NLW. Hated was they would just gobble people up. And it's just bullshit. I just thought it was bullshit. It's like, no, this is a guest from this company coming here to ECW to have a one-off match. I'm not going to rip you off and say, oh, yeah, we've got these now just because we can. I always felt very strong about identity. So when we ended up merging with SCBW, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I felt strongly about the fact, now we are ECW, we've got a roster now, we've got, diversity there. And, they were happy to fold SCBW and come into ECW. There was no debate about, oh, should we change the name to something, SECW or so. In my head, it was, okay, they're happy to kind of be engulfed into the ECW thing. We're all going to be better off for it. We've kind of already got the ball rolling with the ECW name with me and Oz because we were somewhat known by that point. So let's fucking do this and show them what ECW is about. So as I said, I just tinkered with the name. It went from Essex to Eastern to, cover that entire base and cover the fact that we've had an expansion. So, that's when I realised. And when I really realised that we were hitting our stride was when we understood each other's humour, because what I found great was the fact that they had this kind of warped humour as well. Like Dave. Dave was cutting hilarious promos before we even knew him. Like there's this amazing one, talking of Fake Blood, that they filmed, must have been about 2001. I think he's in his shed or something like that, and he's cutting this serious promo where he's bleeding. It's like a load of fake blood in his face, but he's cutting this serious promo, and then he just starts going mental. Right. And at one point, he just goes, "I've got fake blood on my face!" Just completely breaks kayfabe completely. And, he did this other promo about basically Short Round was down cutting a promo saying this and that. Dave's meant to do a run-in. So instead of running in, he jogs on, screaming, waving his hands in the air and goes, "Nah!" And then just hits him in the back of the head and then just continues like it's a completely normal promo. So Dave was a great spearhead in making ECW what it was, because me and Ollie already had this warped sense of humour, and then Dave added to it, who was from another crew, and it was like, okay, this can all work quite well together. So that was what made ECW ECW. It was a hybrid. It had good wrestling, mainly hardcore, diverse characters, and a fucking good sense of humour. There was nobody else that could do the segments in the way we did them, like things like the weapons seller, just ridiculous shit. And I take an awful lot of pride in that we just did things completely differently, and it was a very beautiful cocktail of seriousness mixed with complete idiocy. And for me, 2002 that we merged. Yeah, it would have been about the end of 2002. I think we really started to hit our stride, and people recognised the new ECW as ECW, all the new guys in there. And, we became quite a force in the end. We had some good matches, good feuds, good characters, and some memorable segments. So, yeah, I'd say that's roughly when it sort of came about.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that because, well, not interesting, I guess it's a given, but for me, whenever I think of ECW, I always think of the humour,
Yeah.
And, when I kind of joined the forum and looked back at the old comps, people would send me on MSN, and I'm like, are you kidding me? There's a comp called Crash Bang Wallop, what a video.
Yeah.
I was like, you got to be kidding me, this is amazing,
Exactly. It's incredible. I found some old camcorder footage when I was moving out of my family home, and I don't know if I've sent you this clip. I think I uploaded it somewhere. I don't know if you ended up seeing it, but it was a few little tidbits from these ECW recordings from back in 2002. And where was I going with this? I've completely lost my train of thought.
We're talking about the humor and the. Well, I guess I could ask you about the funny event titles, and.
Oh, that's right. There was one of the clips is just titled "How Things Can Go From Serious to Hilarious in Moments," and there's a perfect example of it. It's literally just Oz hitting a pile driver on Dreamer's brother. Everything's all normal, and then suddenly Dreamer gets up, and he's the commentator. He's wearing like the JR hat and starts like chucking water over people. And then me as the ref starts taking the water bottle and chucking it over Oz while he's down, and Dreamer starts slipping over in the ring. And it's just completely unplanned, just completely ridiculous. Then the match just carries on. And that's just how we did it. It was weird. It could just go from so serious to so ridiculous in the space of a few seconds. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's something I loved about my Fed WCW was that we had so much fun and we would do ridiculous stuff but try and do the serious things as well.
Yeah.
And one event name we had was I'm sure I think it was WCWE it's the hottest day of the year since the world was magma or something like that. And I just remember writing out the comp name as I saved the file and it just went past the screen,
Yeah, again, I think it was that I wanted to be unique. As I said, I know it's eye-rolling when I say that because we were called ECW, but as I said, my way of thinking was that it was such a rip-off that it was original because nobody else was ripping it off that much to the point where it was actually kind of refreshing. But yeah, all the show names, it ain't Noel's house party. Who the fuck calls a show It Ain't Noel's house party?
That's iconic to me though. Like, when I think of that, that comp and yeah, it's just interesting.
What I find hilarious though is that you can say it in a serious context.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of have to take a step back and go, that's stupid.
You can do that anything. You can literally go, right, sand dog.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it just stuck, and I never really liked that name, but it just, because it became one of those kind of things, it just becomes, you just accept it, You
got to go along with it, mate. If that's what the people are telling you to go, you kind of just got to do it, really. There's no point pushing an elephant up the stairs. Sometimes you got to embrace it.
But I think what I loved about ECW was that it really embraced the fun side of backyard wrestling, as well as the serious side.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. And that's something, it's hard really, because as it went on, I wanted to get more serious. I wanted a proper entrance way, and I wanted music played at all the shows, and I wanted a good ring bass, and I wanted consistency. But there was always a part of me that made sure that we still fulfilled that comedy commitment. We'd have like ridiculous battle royals and things like that where you could get all your shit in, like all the ridiculous gimmicks. Like I never wanted to completely go away from that. I wanted things to tighten up, but I never ever wanted to leave behind the roots of ECW, and that was the unique humour that we managed to intertwine with a pretty decent product.
Yeah. What were some of your favourite events or even matches that you had at those early ECW events?
It's a good question. Let's see. I mean, one that sticks out that wouldn't hold up whatsoever would be me and Oz at We Botch 2003, which is meant to be his retirement match. That was a fun one because, to me, it was always easy facing Oz. A lot of people said he was extremely difficult to work with, and towards the end of it he was because his heart wasn't in it anymore. But for me, we knew each other like the back of our hands, we'd spent so much time wrestling, even not in front of a camera. We didn't even care if we had a camera. You know, sometimes we'd just wrestle. I remember getting this little digital camera. You know, you remember when digital cameras used to be a thing because you didn't have
little clips.
Stuff. Yeah, and I remember it was the worst quality in the world. It was absolutely awful, but you could film little 6-second clips. And we'd just go somewhere and just film bumps. We just knew each other so well that it was so easy to face him. A lot of stuff we didn't even have to call. It would just happen, and we knew it was happening. So, yeah, that was a fun one. Moving on a little bit to 2003, I absolutely loved my match with Dreamer at ECW 1. And it was based in front of absolutely nobody because we did it the day after the show. It's ECW 1 2003 it was.
Okay.
And we did it in Harlow at this arena where there's actually concrete underneath the grass. And it was in the middle of summer. So even the ground was rock solid, and then you've got the concrete underneath it as well. And we fucking just went for it. I think we literally just had, I think it might have just been Dave filming, and that was it. It was literally just us two having a match. And it was a real good match. A real good match. That's just a couple that spring to mind.
When did you start travelling like further out? Because wasn't Britfest 2 up in Newcastle? That was 2002, right? Or was it 2003? It was when you wrestled Farrell.
Right. The first Northern Britfest.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been 2002. I think it was... Let me see. So we had Southern Britfest, which was down at UWF, Parit's Fed.
Oh yeah, talk about that. I don't really know much about that event. I've seen the comp, obviously.
Oh man, it's the best event to never happen. Oh god, it was a heartbreaker.
Got stopped, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was an absolute heartbreaker. So it was one of the first times that, you know, people are getting brought together. So I remember seeing Pac there. He looked like Screech from Saved by the Bell. He was walking with Paige. He was just a monster. Who else did you have there? Obviously the UWF guys, me and Oz. Birch ended up coming for the day with the CWX guys. So, you know, there was quite a sizable amount of people. You know, UWF consisted of about 5 guys. So, you know, to get into double figures was a pretty big deal. And especially... when you're travelling that sort of distance, it was a very, very new thing for us to do any sort of interfed. So, yeah, so Southern Britfest was the name. Ring in the Garden, that was luxury. It was just amazing wrestling in the ring. It was a homemade one. It was soft. Didn't have any give, but it was just really, really soft, if that makes sense. So it's fine. So anyway, the main event was going to be, I believe it was either a 4-way or a 6-way. Can't remember which one. Death match, scaffold match. And he had scaffold set up. And I seem to remember I was going to take a flip bump off of it through, I think, 3 different death match boards all stacked up. So like the barbed wire board, the thumbtack board, and the broken glass board. And yeah, I couldn't wait. Like, this is back in the day where taking a big bump turned me on. Like, I could not wait to do it. Like, I absolutely loved the thought of it. So, I seem to remember having a concrete cage match with Thunder Dragon. Because there was basically this cage set up outside of some old disused building. And he really wanted to do this concrete match with me in a cage. Oh, and I just remember thinking... I don't know if I want to do this before because I'm probably going to fuck myself up a little bit here. And I don't remember whether it was filmed or anything, but I just remember having this match in this cage in the concrete. And then we must have ended up going back to the ring. And we had a bit of a match there. And I think it was almost like meant to be like almost like a dark match, I think. And then we had like a couple of like practice matches just pissing about. And then when the event was meant to start, it was all shut down. I can't remember. I think it might have been a neighbour complaint. And then, like, representatives from the council turned up and demanded that we shut the whole thing down. We can't do it. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I remember that night we went to the beach and had a campfire on the beach, all having a couple to drink. And I just remember everyone just feeling really deflated. You know, we tried to make a night of it, but man, that was heartbreaking. I mean, there's still a comp of it because there's like a couple of the warm-up matches and me versus Thunder Dragon, but man, it was so disappointing. But yeah, a month or two after that, you had Northern Britfest, which was probably, I'm tempted to say August 2002. Yeah, that was where I faced Farrell, but I mean, that was a big thing. That was a big thing. A lot of different guys there. It was almost the crossing of two eras as well. You know, it was the end of the EMBW and SWA one.
Right. Yeah.
The start of the newer feds coming along. Your FXWs, your ECWs, and all the rest of it. Very weird. You know, I stayed up with Rizzo. I was really good friends with Rizzo. Great guy, hard as shit. Straight talking. He always liked me. I don't know why, but he always liked me. He was always very good to me. I remember even when I was chatting to him when I was still in school, I remember a few guys were really getting on my case at school. It was when my dad had an affair and, you know, in the process of divorce and all the rest of it. And they started taking the piss out of me over MSN. Just, you know, started saying, "Oh, where's your dad?" And all this. Like, it's horrible, heartbreaking bullying.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Rizzo about it, and he was like, "When do you want me down?" It's like, I don't know, mate. I don't know about it. He was like, "I'm going to come down." He said, "I'm bringing my baseball bat." So he said, I'll take these cunts out. And he meant it. He full on meant it. Because I remember my mum had to speak to him. Like, my mum sometimes spoke to him. Like, she loved him. And had to kind of talk him round and say, "No, look, don't worry. I really appreciate it, but it's okay." And he would have done it. He absolutely would have done it. I know for a fact he would have done. He's a great guy. So yeah, I stayed with him. Met guys like Farrell for the first time.
What was your first impressions of Farrell?
I keep nearly getting confused thinking about Northern Britfest 2, but I'm actually talking about Northern Britfest 1. Did you ever see Northern Britfest 1?
Yeah, I found the comp like years ago after trying to find it for a long time, but yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I keep accidentally nearly going into 2, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember seeing Farrell for the first time, just thinking, well, there's somebody who's just Ric Flair. That's interesting. That's different. Wasn't really my cup of tea. Didn't really have a lot to say to him. I don't think we had that much interaction. But yeah, wrestling-wise, really wasn't my cup of tea because I was very hardcore orientated then. You know, I just wanted to wrap myself up in barbed wire. So to see somebody, you know, hitting 3 punches and a wind-up punch and a couple of back body, it wasn't really doing it for me. But I appreciate the fact he was a big guy. He bumped really well, and he brought something different to the table. Wasn't my cup of tea, but it brought something different to the table. I mean, obviously, my views changed in time. Obviously, he's fucking magnificent, but I just hadn't matured as a wrestling fan just yet. So he was a little bit further ahead in the game.
Yeah, well, I understand. I mean, again, I was asking about your first impressions. I know that, you know, I think everyone can at least respect what he's done. And just the longevity of his run as well was ridiculous.
Unbelievable, mate. Absolutely unbelievable.
So who did you wrestle on the first Britfest then?
It was a 3-way match. It was me, Pac, and a guy called G.I. Joe from SWA. Why oh why he was called that. But that was kind of... Because Rizzo organised the first one, I believe, actually.
Okay.
And he wanted his guy in there. G.I. Joe was his guy. He was always shilling G.I. Joe. He was one of the main guys in SWA. And he was okay. But Rizzo really thought highly of him and I think really wanted to give him a chance to get his name out there against somebody like me and somebody like Pac. So it was his idea to do the 3-way. Yeah, it's a decent little match. You know, barbed wire, trying to do big bumps and all the rest of it. And yeah, you know, it was what it was. It was fun. Trying to think how it ended. I think it ended with a double sit-out rock bottom into barbed wire, like Pac did it on me and G.I. Joe. So there's barbed wire either side. I remember it hurting so much because there's not really much support. You're literally just jumping up and doing a huge back bump, really. Like there's no gradualness to it. It was just pretty nasty. I remember that hurting a lot. And getting some pretty bad scars in that too. But yeah, no, it's a fun event. And it was the start of something quite big. I mean, the second one was huge.
Yeah.
Well, Britfest 2 was massive.
What was that like, that event?
Oh, it was amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You know, performing in front of the fucking Angel of the North. It was very strange.
Yeah, just to cut in very quickly, it was mad. Did you see that that video package WWE put out with Pac going back to Newcastle? And it was just looking at that, it's like, that's, man, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was
mad.
like, oh yeah, Northern Britfest 2. It was really strange. But there's one thing that sticks out in my mind. There's a couple of things that stick out in my mind. One of them was the pettiness of FXW. Oh, it's really annoyed me. So there was a big falling out of FXW and Pac, because Pac used to wrestle for FXW and then left to go to UVW. FXW hated UVW and vice versa. I mean, they were chalk and cheese. FXW was, you know, everything sort of Farrell stood for, like quite traditional, you know, quite, you know, they tried their best to have good presentation. You know, they'd have their logo at the bottom of everything. They'd done their graphic design and all the rest of it. They're trying their best to be professional. And then you had UVW, who were dark, gritty, dingy.
Yeah.
Just, you know, just dark. Like, it's the only word I can describe to use UVW. It was so dark, like the music and
the difference between the two feds, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, FXW would always upload in beautiful quality, and UVW was always sketchy. It fucking looked like a disused college or something. It was chalk and cheese, and Pac ended up going there, and I think it left quite a bitter taste in FXW's mouths. So when UVW had their match on Northern Britfest 2, it was Pac versus Barnesy, Voodoo, and Little C, Freeway. It was quite a highly revered match. It was talked about a lot. You know, it's the first sort of spot fest on a mainstream level in UK backyard wrestling. It blew people's minds. But FXW, as soon as the match starts, all of them all in unison turn round, turn away. I couldn't believe it.
Oh my god.
How pathetic. How much of an arsehole do you look if you're one of those guys? Being a fucking little sheep. No respect at all. You look pathetic. And you can see it in the comp as well. They end up turning back round, but they stand far away. They like watch from a distance. Like, you sad motherfuckers. You sad motherfuckers. So that sticks out in my mind. Also, I remember getting a rock thrown at my head. That wasn't very fun.
What?
Yeah, me and Oz went to stay at Farrage's, and rough as shit area. I think it's called Harlow Green, I think actually it's called.
If it's been the same place the whole time, because I went and stayed at his, like, maybe late 2009 or something.
Rough as shit.
Yeah, if it's the same area.
Yeah, I think it is, mate. I think it is. So me, Oz and Farrage are walking towards his. There's a bunch of chavers, as they call them up
It's
there.
a little bit of a walk down from the Angel, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, that's right.
Same
It's literally down the road from it, yeah. So we're walking towards Farrage's. There's like a bunch of little cunts, like about 13, maybe even 12, 11. There's a load of them, and, you know, giving us a bit of mouth. But I think, you know, I don't know whether they got a knife or something. I don't know what the drill is up here. I've heard that Northerners are fucking mental, so I'm just going to leave it. So we're walking past and Farrage isn't saying anything, and I think, well, Farrage can look after himself, so if he's not saying anything, probably best not to. So we walk past them, carry on walking, we're getting just towards Farrage's front door, bang, feel a massive impact on the back of my head.
Ugh.
Look down, rock. One of them thrown a fucking rock directly at my head. Yeah, I just thought, I want to get the fucking, this is horrible, man. Like, I don't want to kick off or anything. Let's just get the fuck in and talk about it there. I was so thrown off. Like, it was so unexpected. But yeah, I remember that. I remember me and Oz having a colossal falling out at Farrage's because during me versus Farrell, I did a funk spot. I was dressed as Funk because my whole idea was kind of like the Funk Flair type deal. And at one point we started brawling over near everybody's bags. Like, everybody had rucksacks. And at one point, I picked up Ollie's rucksack and launched it in the air. Because, like, Funk used to do that, like, chuck chairs in the air and things like that. So I launched it in the air, and it hit Farrell on the head. Like, Farrell made sure that it hit him on the head, and he front bumped it. It looked fucking great. But Ollie sprinted over, was like, you fucking idiot, that's got my camera in it. I think he had, like, a digicam in there. He's like, it's got my fucking camera in it. And he was still hot as fuck about it, like after the show when we got to Farrage's. And it was annoying me so much. I was like, dude, it don't matter, it's fine. And I kept like mugging him off. He was like, as if it's fine. Like he used to have such a bad temper. He's like, as if it's fucking fine. Fucking fine on fucking camera. And I remember him like getting up close to me, like he wanted to fight. And this is all like in Farrage's living room. Like we had a really heated argument. I've made it sound terrible, this show, but no, it was really good fun. It's just that there are a couple of the things that immediately spring to mind. But yeah, great show, lot of fun people, pretty iconic.
And what about the match with Farrell? I mean, how was it putting that together with him? Because you kind of did like a kind of funk thing, and you were wearing the funk pants, weren't you? I'm sure you were.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Easy as fuck. Absolutely easy as fuck. I seem to remember... Let me see. Let me think about this. I was about to fall asleep one night. I come up with an end spot, but I think that was for one of our matches later down the line. Because in this match, I think the finish was he did a figure four around the ring post and I tapped out. But I seem to remember the match we had at NLW, which was our second out of the 3 matches we had. I was falling asleep one night, and you know the part just before you're about to drift into unconsciousness, you have that funny in-between part where sometimes you think about stuff that you can't even possibly fathom. And this idea just came into my head. There was no build-up to it. Just went bang. It was just in my head, and I wrote it down straight away. And the idea was to take the psychology from the first match. As I said, he stuck me in a figure four around the ring post, and I tapped. So at NLW... he stuck me in a figure four around the ring post on the outside, and then he shuffled around like 180 degrees to make sure that I was inside the ring, and I tapped out then. And it was weird. It was just one of those ideas I come up with when I was half asleep. But Farrell, totally easy. Don't really have to plan a great deal. You know the spots Farrell does. I got to be Funk, which is just hilarious because you get to just be mindless. Like, whatever I want to do, I'll do it because that's what Funk does. That's what makes Funk Funk. He's insane. So, if I see something, I'm going to pick it up and throw it at him. It was easy. It was so easy. And what I love about working with Farrell is each of the 3 matches we had were all completely different. Like, the first one was a wild brawl. The second one was completely technical. And the third one was a hybrid, XPB.
Yeah, I love that last match you guys had. It was really good.
Yeah, because I bought the Funker out again for that. Halfway through the match, I went into Funk mode and we started brawling in the river. And oh god, it was so much fun. Yeah, that was probably my favourite one, the final one. But yeah, each time we did everything slightly differently. I remember it being so easy to work with. Like before the match, I'd say, dude, I want to do this. He'd go, yeah, it's fine. Like even if it was something hardcore that I thought you wouldn't like, it's like, yeah, sounds great. Just easy. One of the easiest opponents you're ever going to face. Easy. He gets it. Anyone who gets it, it's easy.
Yeah, I love the stuff you I can't remember if you gave him a back body drop in the river or something, or he fell off a tree, or it was just ridiculous, brilliant,
Yeah, I gave him a backdrop in there, yeah.
Creative stuff.
Again, I come up with the idea, I was like, dude, I just feel like we should go into the river. I don't know what we should do. He was like, oh, I love it. He's like, yeah, okay. Did you maybe want to go for a pile driver and I'll give you a backdrop? Yeah. he was fucking loving it, mate. So, it was awesome. Great fun. Easy gig. You're going to get a night off every single time.
So what was it like after, like, Northern Brit Fair? I'm guessing these like the first kind of interfeds, like the big ones.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're travelling up north and stuff. So what, did it, BYW change for you after that? Or... just get bigger and better kind of thing. Yeah,
it changed just because more doors were open. Seeing more people, more of the time, over longer distances. It was an evolution, but it changed. You definitely felt the change. It was, there were people driving. That opened up a lot of new doors. Dave was driving. We become really good friends. We'd travel everywhere together. We'd do the journeys up to Newcastle, and it just changed. Everything got bigger, and everybody got closer. Through competition, through respect, the the drink was coming onto the scene. People were smoking. It's just everything got turned the fuck up in a big way. And it was great. It was just when everything really, really started hotting up. The interfeds really, really stoked that fire. It really, really did. As I said, eventually it was probably almost the beginning of the end in a funny way, because when something gets so big, it can't stay big. And it eventually kind of slowly killed the territories, as I like to call it, like the more localised feds. Because why do that when you could see everyone and have an awesome big show, you know? So, but that it really started killing off the territories when NLW started doing it, because that was every time we had a half term, you'd get your asses down to NLW and catch up with everyone again. So the concept of doing your own localised wrestling just wasn't as appealing anymore. It wasn't as big. It felt second rate. And, you know, this wasn't a conscious thing at the time, but that's how it ended up fading out, because why are you going to go for that one when you can do the bigger one? So I guess in a way it started a trend that would eventually swallow itself up. But it evolved. It needed to happen. The whole thing probably would have died if it didn't happen anyway. So it's funny, isn't it? You know, when things evolve, it happens for a reason, and it's the path that it's meant to take. So that's just how it happened, I think. But yeah, no, everything changed for the better. But eventually it kind of gets too big and kills itself. So.
All right, so that's it for this part of the podcast. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming out on Wednesday. Although, to be fair, I'm sure by the time most people have listened to this, it's already been and gone. So if you're looking for part 2, it's up on the website. You can just get right back into it. We talk about loads of other stuff in part 2, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Yeah, thanks for listening.